A birthday turns into a dangerous secret when Rosé turns off the lights and ignites Bruno Mars. Heart, love, fear, and shock collide. The lights went out just as Bruno drew a breath to blow out the candles, and in the darkness, a voice whispered from the stage, "Don't move. This isn't an ordinary surprise," sending his heartbeat into a wild sprint before the music cut off abruptly, like a rope snapping. The scent of vanilla candles mixed with stage smoke hung in the air. Bruno felt a chill crawl along his spine, not from the darkness, but from the tone of that voice, soft, brave, and far too familiar. He gave a small smile, a reflex honed by years under spotlights, trying to calm the crowd now swallowed by a hush as deep as a night sea. Outside the sealed Los Angeles venue, a thin rain tapped the roof like impatient fingers. A single spotlight ignited. Rosé stood there in a simple black dress, its fine stitching drinking in the light. Her blonde hair was tied low, her face calm, but her eyes that always held two layers of story, shimmered with something Bruno had never fully seen, resolve braided with fear. Applause broke out, but Rosé lifted her hand for silence. The music did not return. She stepped forward, each footfall ringing on the wooden floor, its rhythm competing with Bruno's heart. "It's your birthday," Rosé said, her voice clear, "and I brought a gift that might make you hate me or finally understand." The words fell like glass. Bruno let out a small laugh, deflecting his nerves with the charisma that always saved him. "I like risky gifts," he said, though his mind drifted to the nameless text he'd received that morning. "Don't trust the stage. Listen to the pause." Rosé glanced toward the crew at the side of the stage. The other lights stayed dark. She asked for a second microphone and slid the black piano to center stage. Her fingers touched the keys, cold, slick, and Bruno noticed her small habit. Rosé always pressed the low note twice before starting, as if testing whether the floor would hold. She played the first chord, minor and slow, like a door opening halfway. Behind the melody, Rosé saw flashes of the past. Silent studios in Seoul, rehearsals until dawn, secrets swallowed for the sake of professionalism, and one night when she almost said everything but chose silence. Silence that became habit that hardened into fear, the fear of losing the safe space they'd built out of laughter and music. She drew a breath, inhaled the scent of old wood from the piano, and began to sing. The lyrics weren't an old song. This was a confession. Bruno stood frozen. Every word summoned memories he'd carefully filed away. Late-night talks backstage, jokes about bitter coffee, the way Rosé tapped the table when she was nervous. Yet beneath the beauty, another tension stirred. From the corner of his eye, he saw a man in a dark suit moving too quickly near the exit, threat or just a late guest. Bruno weighed it, stage instinct clashing with survival instinct. When the song reached its refrain, Rosé stopped. Silence ruled again. She lifted her gaze to Bruno. "I've been hiding something," she said, "because I was afraid music wouldn't be strong enough to hold it." She reached for an envelope behind the piano, thick paper, worn edges. "This isn't a contract, it's the truth." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Bruno stepped forward, felt the rough texture of the envelope in his hand, coarse, real. Inside were photos and notes. Puzzle pieces of the night. A song was never released because it was too honest. Bruno read quickly. His jaw tightened. In those lines were the name of a powerful producer, soft threats, and a choice he had once made without knowing its consequences for Rosé. Guilt surged, tangled with anger. He lifted his head. "You should have told me," he said quietly. Rosé nodded. "I know, I chose silence so we could keep singing." The side door creaked. The man in the dark suit now stood clearly in view, phone to his ear. Bruno closed the envelope. He moved to the microphone. "Tonight," he told the audience, "the music will pause for a moment." He turned to Rosé. "And we'll talk." They stepped off the stage together, their hands nearly touching, a distance so small it held 1,000 possibilities. In the back room, the smell of stale coffee and hot cables rushed over them. Rosé exhaled, her shoulders dropping, the mask of courage cracking. "I'm scared," she admitted. Bruno looked at her not as an icon, but as a human learning to accept. "Me too," he said, "but I don't want to be afraid alone anymore." Outside, the rain eased. Inside, the lights stayed off, but something was lit. Not a perfect promise, but the courage to turn on the truth and let the music wait. The door shut behind them with a dull thud, sealing off the roar of the crowd. And the silence that followed was sharper than any scream because now there was nowhere left to hide. Bruno leaned against the counter, running a hand through his hair, laughter threatening to bubble up and die in his throat at the same time. "You really know how to hijack a birthday," he said, half teasing, half raw. Confessions, mystery men, unreleased songs. Was there cake in the envelope too? Rosé didn't smile. She crossed her arms, fingers digging into her sleeves as if anchoring herself. "Don't joke," she said. "Not about this. I didn't come tonight to be dramatic. I came because I ran out of places to hide." He straightened at that, the humor draining from his face. "Hide from what? From me?" His voice rose despite himself. "Do you know how insane that sounds? All those nights you sat across from me, laughed with me, looked me in the eye." "And lied," she cut in, sharp and shaking. "Yes, I know exactly how it sounds." The air felt too warm, thick with electricity. Bruno took a step toward her, then stopped, palms open. "You think I wouldn't have stood with you? You think I'd let someone bury your voice because it made them uncomfortable?" Rosé let out a breath that was almost a laugh, brittle and exhausted. "You didn't let them," she said softly. "You just didn't know, and that's the part that hurts the most." She turned away, packing, her heels clicking like a countdown. "They told me if that song came out, I'd be labeled difficult, emotional, unstable. And you," she swallowed, "you'd be painted as reckless for backing me. I couldn't be the reason you burned." Bruno's jaw clenched. "You don't get to decide what I'm willing to burn for," he snapped. "You took that choice away." Silence crashed between them. Rosé faced him again, eyes glassy but defiant. "I know," she said, "and I hate myself for it. But I was terrified that if I told you everything we had, this easy, honest thing would collapse under the weight of reality." He laughed then, a sound edged with anger. "Easy, honest," he shook his head. "You just detonated my birthday on stage, Rosé. You think that's easier than telling me the truth over bad coffee at 2 a.m? Her shoulders slumped. "I tried," she whispered. "So many times. And every time you smiled at me like the world wasn't cruel, like music always won. I didn't want to be the one to prove you wrong." A knock echoed outside the door. Both of them froze. Bruno glanced toward it, then back to her. "Is that him?" he asked quietly. Rosé nodded. "He's been circling for weeks, reminding me that silence is profitable." Bruno stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen to me. I don't care how powerful he is. I don't care how ugly this gets. If you're in it, I'm in it." Her eyes widened. "Don't say that like it's romantic," she said urgently. "This isn't a love song. This is contracts and lawyers and headlines tearing you apart." He met her gaze, steady now. "I've survived headlines," he said. "I'm not sure I'd survive knowing I stayed quiet when it mattered." Another knock, louder this time. A voice filtered through the door, smooth and impatient. Rosé flinched. Bruno reached out instinctively, stopping just short of touching her hand. "Do you trust me?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded once. "With my voice," she said. "With my fear, that's why I'm here." Bruno opened the door. The man in the dark suit smiled as if this were a scheduled meeting, not a confrontation. "Mr. Mars," he said smoothly. "Quite a performance tonight. We should talk about damage control." Bruno smiled back, all warmth gone from his eyes. "Funny," he replied. "I was thinking the same thing." The conversation that followed was tight, verbal blades wrapped in courtesy. Threats were implied, leverage hinted at, careers dangled like bargaining chips. Rosé listened, heart pounding, as Bruno refused every carefully worded warning with calm, infuriating confidence. When the man finally left, irritation etched into his smile. The room sagged with relief. Rosé sank onto a chair, hands trembling. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "You really didn't." Bruno crouched in front of her, finally closing the distance. "Yeah," he said gently, "I did." She looked at him then, not as a star, not as a shield, but as a person choosing her in real time. Tears slipped free. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. He nodded. "Neither do I," a pause, softer now. But next time you're scared, don't sing it to a room full of strangers before you sing it to me." A small, broken laugh escaped her. "Deal." Outside, the crowd waited, unaware that something irreversible had already shifted. The lights would come back on. The music would return, but nothing between them would ever be unspoken again. The lights came back on with a roar that felt almost violent, applause crashing over them as if nothing behind the curtain had cracked open, as if two lives hadn't just tilted off their familiar axis. Bruno walked back on stage first, smile polished, shoulders loose, every inch the performer the world trusted. Rosé followed half a step behind, pulse still hammering, skin buzzing like she'd touched a live wire. When she reached the microphone, she felt the heat of the lights, smelled the metallic tang of cables and sweat, heard the crowd chanting his name. And beneath it all, a quieter sound, the one she'd been running from for years, her own breath, uneven but finally free. Bruno leaned toward her, lips barely moving. "You okay?" She nodded, though her voice came out low and rough when she replied, "Ask me after this." The band kicked in, loud and joyful, a deliberate distraction. Bruno sang, danced, laughed, but every lyric felt double-edged now, every flirtatious grin aimed half at the crowd and half at her. Rosé watched him from the corner of the stage, chest tight, realizing how often she'd hidden behind admiration when what she felt was far more dangerous. Between songs, Bruno grabbed the mic again. "Tonight's been wild," he said, crowd roaring in agreement. "But sometimes the real music happens when you stop pretending everything's fine." A ripple of murmurs swept through the venue. Rosé stiffened. She hadn't known he'd do this. He glanced at her, a silent question. She didn't stop him. "I've learned something tonight," Bruno continued. "That silence can be louder than any song, and sometimes it hurts the people standing right next to you." The crowd fell into a charged quiet. Phones lifted. Rosé's stomach dropped. Bruno turned to her fully. "You want to say something?" Her throat tightened. This wasn't planned. This wasn't safe. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. But she stepped forward anyway. "When you live in this world," she began, voice trembling before steadying, "you learn how to smile through things that scare you. You learn how to make yourself smaller so others can stay comfortable." A murmur ran through the audience, sharper now, curious, hungry. "I wrote a song once," she went on, eyes locked on the lights so she wouldn't look at Bruno. "That scared powerful people. Not because it was angry, but because it was honest." She finally looked at him then, and I let myself believe that honesty was the problem. Bruno shook his head slowly. It was. Something broke open in her chest at the certainty in his voice. "I know that now," she said, "but knowing it doesn't erase the fear." Bruno reached out, taking her hand. The contact was electric, unmistakable, and the crowd reacted instantly, gasps, cheers, confusion colliding. "This isn't a stunt," he said firmly, addressing them all. "This is what happens when you stop choosing comfort over truth." Backstage, alarms were already going off. Phones vibrated. Managers whispered urgently. But on stage, neither of them moved. Rosé leaned closer, voice low enough that only he could hear. "You're blowing this wide open." He smiled, a flash of something fierce and tender. "You already lit the match." The song that followed wasn't on the set list. Just piano, just voice, just her. Bruno sat beside her on the bench, silent, present, letting her take the space she'd been denied. The lyrics cut deep, about being loved quietly, about being warned to behave, about choosing yourself even when it costs everything. By the final note, Rosé was shaking. The applause hit like thunder, raw and unfiltered, and for a moment she thought she might collapse under it. Backstage afterward was chaos. "What the hell was that?" a manager hissed. "Do you have any idea what kind of storm you just invited?" Bruno shrugged, calm in a way that infuriated them. "An honest one." Rosé stood off to the side, hands clasped, heart pounding. "I never asked you to risk this," she said quietly when they were finally alone again. Bruno turned to her, eyes intense. "No, you trusted me with the truth, that's worse, and better." She laughed weakly. "You're impossible." "And you're done hiding," he shot back. A notification buzzed on her phone. then another. Headlines were already forming, speculation exploding, names being dragged into the open. Rosé looked at the screen, panic flaring. This is moving fast. Bruno stepped closer, lowering his voice. Look at me, he said. She did. Whatever comes next, contracts, threats, fallout, you don't face it alone. Her eyes searched his, desperate and hopeful all at once. And if this ruins us, she asked, if everything between us gets crushed by the noise? He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet, stripped of performance. Then at least it was real. She swallowed hard, tears burning. That's the scariest thing you could have said. He smiled softly. Yeah, but it's also the truest. Outside, the world was already rewriting their story. Inside, two people stood in the aftermath of a choice that could not be undone, hearts exposed, futures uncertain, and silence finally, mercifully broken. Morning arrived without mercy. Rosé woke to the vibration of her phone skittering across the nightstand like a trapped insect. She didn't open her eyes at first. She didn't have to. The weight in her chest told her everything had already detonated. Bruno was awake beside her, sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, phone in hand, jaw tight. He hadn't slept. She could tell by the way his shoulders were squared, like he was bracing for impact that kept coming in waves. You're trending, he said quietly without looking at her. She let out a breath that sounded like a laugh but was. Let me guess, not for my vocal range. He finally turned. They're calling it a confession, a stunt, a rebellion, a betrayal. His mouth twitched. Depends on which outlet you read. Rosé sat up, pulling the sheet around herself like armor. And you? He shrugged. I'm being called reckless, romantic, irresponsible, brave. A pause, dangerous. Her stomach clenched. I told you this would happen. Bruno stood, packing. No, he said, voice sharp. You warned me people would try to control the story. That's not the same thing. She rubbed her temples. The room smelled like cold coffee and last night's adrenaline. My label called at 6, she said. They didn't even say hello. Bruno stopped packing. What did they say? That I embarrassed them, that I violated expectations, that I should have come to them first. Her voice cracked. That I've become a liability. Anger flashed across his face. That's bullshit. Welcome to the business, she snapped back, harsher than she meant to. She closed her eyes, breathing out. I'm sorry I didn't sleep. Neither did I, he said. Because every time I closed my eyes, I kept hearing your voice on that stage, and thinking about how close we came to never having that moment. Silence stretched, thick and complicated. Rosé looked at him then, really looked. Do you regret it? He didn't hesitate. No. The certainty startled her, not even a little. Ask me again when the lawsuits start, he said dryly. Then softer, but no, not the choice, just the timing. She laughed bitter. Yeah, same. His phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and swore under his breath. Producer wants to meet, today. Her heart dropped. Already. They don't waste time when they smell blood. He met her eyes. I won't go without you. You shouldn't go at all, she said quickly. This is my mess. He stepped closer. Stop, right there. You don't get to carry this alone just because you're used to it. Her throat tightened. You don't owe me this. I know, he said. That's why I'm choosing it. The meeting room downtown was glass and steel and intimidation disguised as elegance. The producer sat at the head of the table, perfectly calm, perfectly amused. Well, he said, smiling thinly, you certainly know how to dominate a news cycle. Rosé felt Bruno tense beside her. She spoke first. You threatened my career to keep a song quiet. The producer raised an eyebrow. I advised you. There's a difference. You leveraged fear, Bruno cut in. That's not advice. The smile faded. Careful, the producer said. You're both very talented people. It'd be a shame to see opportunities dry up. Rosé leaned forward, hands flat on the table, pulse roaring in her ears. I already lived that threat. I'm done pretending it works. The producer studied her, then Bruno. something calculating flickering in his eyes. You think honesty protects you? No, Bruno said calmly. We think silence destroys people. The producer stood. Then this is where we part ways. He straightened his jacket. Don't say I didn't warn you. Outside, the air felt colder, sharper. Rosé's legs trembled as they walked. That went terribly, she said. Bruno exhaled. Yeah, but also kind of great. She stared at him. You're insane. Occupational hazard. They didn't notice the paparazzi until the shutters started snapping. Voices shouted questions like accusations. Are you two together? Was the performance planned? Is this a publicity relationship? Rosé froze. Bruno didn't. He stepped in front of her instinctively, hand finding hers. No comments today, he said firmly. A reporter shouted, Is she the reason you're burning bridges? Bruno smiled without warmth. No, she's the reason I stopped lying. The quote exploded everywhere within minutes. Back in the car, Rosé finally broke. Tears spilled, quiet and furious. I didn't want this, she whispered. I just wanted to sing without being scared. Bruno reached over, squeezing her hand. You did, and you were incredible. She shook her head. I might lose everything. He looked at her, voice steady. Then we build something new. She laughed through tears. You make it sound so easy. It's not, he said, but neither is living half alive. She turned toward him, vulnerability raw and unfiltered. What are we doing, Bruno? He met her gaze, the world outside blurring past the window. We're telling the truth, he said, and whatever survives that is real. Her phone buzzed again, a message from her label, short, cold, final. She swallowed. They're suspending me. Bruno didn't look away. Okay. That was it. No panic, no pity. Just okay. And somehow, in the wreckage of everything she'd feared, that was enough to keep her breathing as the city rushed on, unaware that two people inside a moving car had just stepped off the map they were handed and chosen to draw their own. The car stopped in front of the house just as the sun began to sink, painting the sky in bruised oranges and bleeding pinks, as if the day itself had taken a hit and refused to hide it. Neither of them moved right away. Rosé stared through the windshield, her reflection ghosted over the city lights. I don't recognize my life anymore, she said quietly. It's like someone reached in overnight and rearranged everything. Bruno turned toward her, studying the tension in her jaw, the exhaustion in her eyes. That's what happens when you stop living on autopilot, he said. It's terrifying and loud. She let out a humorless breath. I was so careful for so long, and it still exploded. Yeah, he replied, because careful doesn't mean safe. It just means slower damage. She looked at him sharply. You've thought about this before. He nodded. Every time I watched someone I cared about disappear behind politeness. The words landed heavy between them. Inside the house, the air was thick with unfinished sentences. Rosé kicked off her shoes and paced, restless energy buzzing under her skin. They're already rewriting me, she said, scrolling through her phone. Victim, villain, muse, manipulator, pick one. Bruno watched her spiral, then reached out and gently took the phone from her hand, placing it face down on the counter. Look at me, he said. She did. You're not a headline, he said firmly. You're a person who told the truth. The rest is noise. Her eyes filled again, but this time she didn't look away. What if the noise is louder than the music now? He stepped closer, voice low, intimate. Then we make new music. The doorbell rang. They both froze. Bruno frowned. You expecting anyone? Rosé shook her head, pulse spiking. No. Another ring, impatient. Bruno moved first, opening the door to find her manager standing there. Expression tight, controlled, fury barely leashed. We need to talk, the woman said, eyes flicking to Rosé. Now. Rosé crossed her arms. Say it. The manager exhaled sharply. You're out, not just suspended, replaced. They're calling it mutual. They're burying the song and blaming you for the fire. Bruno stepped forward. "You don't get to do this quietly." "Oh, we do," the manager snapped, "because you handed them the match." Rosé laughed then, a sound edged with grief and relief. "Good," she said. "I was tired of holding gasoline." The manager stared at her, stunned. "You're throwing away everything you built." Rosé met her gaze. "No, I'm taking it with me." Silence. Then the manager scoffed. "You think this," she gestured between them, "lasts when the real cost hits." Bruno's voice cut clean through the tension. "Leave." The door closed harder than necessary. Rosé sagged against the counter, breath shaking. "That was it," she whispered. "That was the last thread." Bruno stepped in front of her, lifting her chin gently. "No," he said. "That was the last leash." She searched his face, raw and exposed. "And if the world decides I'm too much?" He didn't smile. He didn't joke. He answered with absolute honesty. "Then let it. I don't want the version of you that fits in cages." Her composure finally broke. She pressed her forehead to his chest, tears soaking into his shirt, shoulders trembling with everything she'd swallowed for years. He held her without fixing, without rushing, just steady and present. When she pulled back, eyes red but clear, something in her had shifted. "I want to release it," she said suddenly. "The song, independently, I don't care if it never charts." Bruno's lips curved slowly. "That song scares people for a reason." She nodded, "Because it's true." Days later, they sat in a stripped-down studio. No executives, no lawyers, just a piano, a mic, and two people who had decided to stop asking permission. Rosé sang like there was nothing left to lose. When the song dropped, the reaction was immediate and violent in its honesty. Some praised it as fearless, others tore it apart. But beneath the noise, something undeniable happened. People listened. They heard themselves in it. Bruno stood beside her when the backlash hit, when interviews got ugly, when questions crossed lines. He didn't speak for her. He stood with her. And when someone asked him on live television if the risk had been worth it, he looked straight into the camera and said, "Ask me when she's silent again. Until then, yes." Months later, on a smaller stage with softer lights, Rosé stepped up to the mic alone. The room held its breath. "This song almost didn't exist," she said simply, "because I was afraid." She glanced to the side of the stage, where Bruno watched her with quiet pride. "I'm not anymore." She sang. And this time, when the lights dimmed at the end, it wasn't to hide anything. It was to let the truth glow on its own.